The sky above Seoul turned purple that morning. Not the soft purple of twilight, but a deep electric violet that made people stop in the middle of their morning commute and stare upward. Taemin was drinking his third cup of coffee when his phone exploded with notifications. Every news channel showed the same impossible sight: massive ships hovering over every major city on Earth. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. The vessels looked like they were made of liquid metal and light, constantly shifting and reforming. Taemin worked as a xenolinguist at the United Nations, though until that moment his job had been purely theoretical. He studied how humans might communicate with alien life if they ever met any. Now apparently that day had come. His supervisor called within minutes. The voice on the other end was shaking. "Get to UN headquarters now. They want to talk. They speak perfect Korean, English, Mandarin, everything. They're requesting diplomatic channels." Taemin grabbed his jacket and ran. The streets were chaos. Some people were screaming and running for shelter. Others stood frozen, recording everything on their phones. He saw a mother holding her child close, tears streaming down her face. An old man sat on a bench laughing. "I knew it," the old man kept saying. "I always knew we weren't alone." The drive to headquarters normally took 40 minutes. Taemin made it in 15. Military vehicles lined every street, but the soldiers looked as confused as everyone else. Their weapons were pointed at the sky, but what good would bullets do against ships that size? Inside the UN building, controlled chaos reigned. Diplomats from every nation crowded the main assembly hall. Screens showed the alien vessels from every angle. Security footage revealed that the ships had appeared simultaneously at exactly 09:00 GMT. No entry through atmosphere, no approach detected by satellites. They had simply materialized. The Secretary General stood at the podium, her face pale but composed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have received a transmission. They call themselves the Galactic Union. They request a face-to-face meeting with human representatives. They've asked for linguists, diplomats, and scientists." She looked directly at Taemin. "You're going to be in the first contact team." Taemin's stomach dropped. This was everything he'd trained for, everything he'd dreamed about. So why did it feel like walking toward the edge of a cliff? The meeting was scheduled for noon. The aliens chose neutral ground, a converted stadium in Geneva. When Taemin arrived with the 20-person human delegation, he saw that the stadium had been transformed. The aliens had installed some kind of technology that made the air shimmer. The grass had been replaced by a smooth pearl-white surface that seemed to glow from within. Then they arrived, not in ships but simply walking through portals that opened in the air itself. Taemin counted representatives from at least a dozen different species. Some were humanoid, others definitely not. One looked like it was made of living crystal. Another seemed to be composed of water held together by force fields. But two of them captured his attention immediately. The first was tall and elegant, with skin that glowed faintly blue. Her features were similar to human, but her eyes were completely silver, without visible pupils. She moved with impossible grace. The second was shorter, with skin that looked like polished copper. Geometric patterns covered her body, and her hair seemed to be made of fiber optics that changed color with each movement. The tall one stepped forward and spoke. Her voice was musical but clear. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Hana of Velara. This is Yuna of Kryn. We speak for the Galactic Union, an alliance of 847 species across 2,000 worlds." She smiled, and it looked genuine. "We come with an invitation. Humanity is ready to join the wider galaxy." The stadium erupted in whispers. The Secretary General raised her hand for silence. "You honor us with your presence. What does this invitation entail?" Yuna spoke next. Her voice was deeper, more forceful. "The Union exists to promote peace, trade, and mutual growth among all sapient species. We offer you technology, knowledge, and protection. In return, you follow Union law and contribute to our shared civilization." It sounded too good to be true. Taemin found himself studying both aliens carefully. Hana noticed him watching and made eye contact. For a moment, he felt like she was reading his thoughts. Then she looked away and the moment passed. The initial meeting lasted 4 hours. The aliens explained that they had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for humanity to develop certain key technologies before making contact. Nuclear power, quantum computing, and genetic engineering were the benchmarks. Humanity had crossed the final threshold 3 months ago. "We do not interfere with developing species," Hana explained. "But once a civilization reaches your level, We must make contact. The galaxy is not empty and not all species are peaceful. Without Union protection, Earth would be vulnerable to those who would exploit you. The delegation asked hundreds of questions. The aliens answered everyone with patience. They showed holographic images of Union worlds, cities that made Earth's greatest metropolises look like villages. They demonstrated technology that seemed like magic, medical devices that could heal any injury, energy systems that created matter from nothing, ships that could cross the galaxy in days. But through it all, Taman noticed something. Whenever someone asked about the specific requirements of membership, both Hana and Yuna became slightly less forthcoming. They spoke of cultural integration protocols and social compatibility requirements without giving details. When pressed, they said those discussions would come later, after humanity had time to process the initial contact. As the meeting ended, Timon was assigned as Earth's primary liaison to the Union delegation. It meant he would work directly with Hana and Yuna, learning their languages, their customs, their laws. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Walking out of the stadium, he felt optimistic. The aliens seemed genuinely friendly. The technology they offered could solve every problem humanity faced: hunger, disease, poverty, even aging. Union membership seemed like an obvious choice. He didn't know yet that buried in the thousands of pages of Union law was a requirement that would shake human civilization to its core. He didn't know that Section 4729 of the Reproductive Diversity Act would force every human to make an impossible choice. He didn't know that within weeks he would be at the center of a crisis that threatened to tear Earth apart. For now he just looked up at the purple sky and smiled. Humanity was joining the stars. What could possibly go wrong? 3 weeks after first contact, Taman thought he understood the aliens. He was wrong. He spent his days in the converted UN facility where the Union had set up their embassy. The building now housed dozens of alien species, each more fascinating than the last. Taman had learned basic Valerian from Hana and was starting to understand Kryn gestures from Yuna. Hana was patient, almost motherly in her teaching style. She would sit with him for hours, explaining the subtle differences between Union cultures. Yuna was more direct, sometimes brutally honest. When Taman made mistakes in protocol, she corrected him immediately. He found himself drawn to both of them in different ways, though he pushed those thoughts aside. They were aliens. He was human. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. The treaty negotiations were progressing well. Earth's governments had formed a unified council to handle Union membership. It was the first time in history that every nation worked together toward a single goal. The benefits were too obvious to ignore. Unlimited clean energy, medical technology that could extend human life by centuries, faster than light travel that would open the galaxy to exploration. Jiwoo, his colleague from the sociology department, worked alongside him. She focused on understanding Union family structures and social systems. "It's remarkable," she told him one morning. "Most Union species don't have traditional marriages like us. They form these group bonds called triads, usually 3 individuals who commit to each other for life." Taman nodded absently. He was reading through the preliminary treaty documents, thousands of pages of legal text. His eyes were starting to cross from the dense language. That afternoon, the full treaty arrived. It came on a holographic data crystal that projected text in any language the reader chose. Sora, Earth's lead negotiator, gathered the core team in a secure conference room. She was a tough woman who had negotiated trade deals with the most difficult governments on Earth. If anyone could handle the Union, it was her. "All right," Sora said, cracking her knuckles. "Let's see what we're really signing up for." Divided into sections. Everyone reads their assigned parts, flag anything unusual. Taemin got section 4000 through 5000, titled Social Integration and Cultural Exchange Protocols. It seemed dry at first, mostly about establishing cultural centers and exchange programs. He was halfway through section 4729 when the word started to register. He read it again, then a third time. His hands began to shake. "Sora," he said quietly, "you need to see this." Something in his voice made everyone stop. Sora walked over and looked at his screen. Her face went from confused to shocked to angry in about 5 seconds. "Get me Hana and Yuna, now!" Within an hour, both aliens sat across from the human delegation in the conference room. Mireille, a Union legal expert whose tentacles gestured as she spoke, joined them. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sora placed the data crystal on the table. Section 4029, the Reproductive Diversity Act. Would one of you care to explain this to us? Hana and Yuna exchanged glances. Hana spoke first. We were going to discuss this separately once you had accepted the broader framework. Discuss it now, Sora said coldly. Mirai's tentacles rippled in what might have been discomfort. The Reproductive Diversity Act is a fundamental union law. It has been in place for 12,000 years. It requires all member species to participate in genetic and cultural exchange programs. In plain language, Jiwoo demanded. Yuna stood up, her copper skin flashing in the light. Every human must form a triad bond. Each human male forms a family unit with 2 females from different union species. Each human female forms a family unit with 2 males from different union species. The matches are arranged to maximize genetic compatibility and cultural exchange. The room exploded. Everyone started talking at once. Sora shouted for silence, her face red with fury. You're telling us that joining the union means forced marriages? Forced reproduction with aliens? Not forced, Hana said softly, but required for membership. The triads are carefully matched based on compatibility assessments. Many grow to love each other deeply. It's been the foundation of union peace for millennia. Taemin felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. He looked at Hana and Yuna with new eyes. Were they here as diplomats or as his potential matches? The thought made him feel sick and confused, and something else he didn't want to examine. This is insane, Jiwoo said. You're asking us to give up our autonomy, our freedom to choose our own partners. How is this different from slavery? Mirai's tentacles waved in sharp patterns. Because it applies to everyone equally. Because the children born from these unions become bridges between species. Because it ended war throughout the union. Before this law, species fought constantly over resources, territory, ideology. Now attack another species and you attack your own grandchildren. It made peace not just possible, but inevitable. The meeting deteriorated from there. Sora demanded time to brief Earth's governments. The aliens agreed, but warned that the law had no exceptions. Either humanity accepted all union requirements or they couldn't join at all. As the room cleared, Taemin found himself alone with Hana and Yuna. He should have left. Instead, he asked, Were you matched with me? Is that why you're here? Hana looked sad. Yes. The compatibility assessments showed we would be a successful triad. But we hoped you would accept us by choice, not requirement. I don't even know you, Taemin said. You could, Yuna replied. If you give us a chance. We're not monsters, Taemin. We're just women who were told we might find love with someone from a new species. That's all any of us wants, love, family, connection. Taemin left without responding. Outside, the news had already leaked. His phone was flooded with messages. Social media was exploding. Someone had released Section 4729 to the public, and humanity was reacting exactly as expected. Protests started within hours. Every major city saw thousands of people marching with signs. Earth for humans. Our bodies, our choice. No alien marriages. The fear and anger were palpable. Religious leaders called emergency meetings. Politicians gave speeches about preserving human dignity and freedom. But there were other voices too. Scientists pointed out that the genetic mixing could eliminate disease and extend human lifespan dramatically. Sociologists noted that the Union had maintained peace for 12,000 years. Some people, a small minority, said they were willing to try if it meant joining the greater galaxy. Taemin went home to his apartment and sat in the dark. His phone kept ringing. His sister Kyung finally got through. Tell me it's not true, she begged. Tell me they're not going to split up my family. Existing families are protected, he told her, remembering something Hana had mentioned. The law applies to unmarried adults and future generations. And you? Kyung asked. What are you going to do? Taemin looked out his window at the alien ship hovering over Seoul, its surface still shifting and beautiful and completely foreign. I don't know, he admitted. I honestly don't know. The choice facing humanity was impossible. Accept the law and give up the right to choose their own partners. Reject it and remain isolated, vulnerable, and alone in a galaxy full of dangers. There was no good answer. There was only the decision and whatever came after. The protest grew larger every day. 1 week after the revelation, over 10 million people marched through the streets of major cities worldwide. They carried signs, chanted slogans, and demanded that their governments reject the Union Treaty. At the center of this movement was a man named Dae-hyun. Taemin watched him on the news screens in the UN facility. Daehyun was young, maybe 30, with intense eyes and a voice that could move crowds. He'd been a labor organizer before first contact, someone who knew how to rally people around a cause. Now he'd found the biggest cause of his life. "They call it unity," Daehyun shouted to a crowd of thousands in London. "I call it slavery. They want to erase what makes us human. They want to take our most fundamental right, the right to choose who we love, who we marry, who we build families with. Are we going to let them?" The crowd roared back, "No!" Taemin felt torn watching it. Part of him understood the anger. The law was invasive, controlling, and went against everything humans believed about personal freedom. But another part of him had spent the last week reading Union history, and the picture was more complicated than Daehyun made it sound. Ji-woo burst into his office carrying a tablet. "You need to see this." Yoonji just released her findings. Yoonji was a biologist on the research team, studying the genetic compatibility data the Union had provided. The report was stunning. Union species could produce hybrid offspring, but only with advanced medical support. The resulting children showed remarkable traits, combining the best characteristics of all three parent species: increased intelligence, enhanced physical capabilities, longer lifespans, and something the report called intuitive empathy, an ability to understand and connect with different species naturally. "They're not just creating families," Ji-woo said. "They're creating a new kind of person, one that belongs to multiple species at once." "Is that good or bad?" Taemin asked. "I don't know. But look at the data on social cohesion. Union member worlds have virtually no violent crime, no war. Conflicts are resolved through mediation because everyone is literally related to everyone else within a few generations." Taemin's sister Kyung visited him that evening. She brought her 2 children, ages 6 and 8. They ran around the UN facility garden while she and Taemin talked on a bench. "I'm scared," Kyung admitted. "Not for me. My marriage is safe. But for them," she nodded toward her kids, "when they grow up, they won't have a choice. They'll be assigned alien partners whether they want them or not. The Union says the matching process considers personality, interests, values. It's not random." "It's still not choice," Kyung said firmly. "And what if they don't want to have hybrid children? What if they want to marry humans they fall in love with naturally?" Taemin had no answer for that. He'd asked Hana the same questions. Her response had been honest but unsatisfying. "Choice is an illusion," she'd said. "Humans already have their choices limited by geography, culture, economics. We just acknowledge it openly and try to make the best matches we can." The Earth First movement, led by Daehyun, grew more organized. They held rallies, created social media campaigns, and lobbied governments to reject the treaty. Public opinion polls showed humanity split almost evenly. 48% wanted to reject Union membership. 45% wanted to accept it. 7% were undecided. Then the violence started. A small group of extremists, claiming to be part of Earth First, attacked an alien cultural center in Mumbai. 3 Union representatives were injured, one seriously. Taehyun immediately condemned the attack, but the damage was done. The Union began to question whether humanity was ready for membership. Taemin found himself spending more time with Hana and Yuna, trying to understand their perspective. They took him to the Union ship, showing him their homes, their lives, who they were beyond their diplomatic roles. Hana's quarters were filled with plants from Valara, each one bioluminescent and beautiful. She made him tea from leaves that tasted like honey and starlight. "I know you're afraid," she said. "I was too when I learned I was matched with someone from a new species. But I chose to be hopeful. I chose to believe we could make something beautiful together." Yuna's quarters were sparse and practical, decorated with weapons and art that showed Kryn military history. "My people were warriors," she told him. "We fought for 10,000 years before joining the Union. The Triad Law seemed like weakness to us. We were wrong. It was strength. It gave us something more important than victory. It gave us peace." Despite himself, Taemin felt drawn to both of them. Hana's kindness, Yuna's strength. They were people, not monsters. They laughed at his jokes, asked about his family, shared their own fears and hopes. In another world, another situation, he might have chosen them freely. But that was the problem. The choice was being taken away. Daehyun requested a meeting with the Union delegation, and surprisingly, they agreed. It was held in the main UN Assembly Hall, broadcast live to every screen on Earth. Timon attended as liaison, sitting between both sides. "Give us one good reason," Daehyun said, his voice controlled but intense. "Why we should surrender our freedom." Mirai, the union legal expert, responded. Her tentacles moved in slow, deliberate patterns. "Because freedom is not absolute. No society grants complete freedom. You already limit marriage choices in many ways. Age restrictions, consent laws, prohibitions on certain relationships. This is simply another parameter, one designed to promote peace and mutual understanding. Those laws protect people," Daehyun countered. "Your law controls them." "It protects species," Yuna said, standing. "You don't understand yet. You think of yourselves as humans first, but your great-grandchildren will think of themselves as Union citizens who happen to have human ancestry. They'll have cousins on 100 worlds. The idea of humans fighting Valerians or Kryn will be as unthinkable as siblings fighting siblings." "And if we don't want that?" Daehyun asked. "If we want to stay human?" Hana spoke then, her voice gentle but firm. "Then you stay here on this one world, limited to one solar system. Meanwhile, there are other species in the galaxy, hostile ones. They know about you now. Without Union protection, they will come, and they won't offer you a choice at all." The assembly hall fell silent. It was a threat, politely delivered, but a threat nonetheless. Join us or face something worse. That night, the extremist faction of Earth First struck again. They planted a bomb near the Union embassy. It was discovered before detonation, but the intent was clear. Some humans would rather fight than submit. Taemin went to his office and found a message waiting. It was from Kyung. "I'm sorry," it said. "I know you're in an impossible position. Whatever you decide, I support you. But please think about whether the galaxy they're offering is worth what we'd have to give up to get there." He sat in the dark, looking at pictures on his desk. His parents, deceased now. His sister and her family, friends from university. A girl he'd dated years ago. All human, all familiar. All part of a world that was about to change forever, one way or another. The question wasn't just about him anymore. It was about billions of people and all the generations to come. Accept the Union law and transform humanity into something new. Reject it and stay as they were, isolated and vulnerable. Bora was the kind of historian who believed the truth always hid in old documents. While everyone else focused on the present crisis, she dug into the Union's archives. They had given Earth access to their historical database as a gesture of goodwill. Most people ignored it, too busy arguing about the Triad Law. Bora read it obsessively. She found the answer in a file dated 12,000 years ago. When she showed Taemin what she'd discovered, his hands went cold. "Look at this," Bora said, projecting holographic images across his office wall. "This is the Dominion. They were the most powerful species in the galaxy before the Union existed." The images showed massive warships, conquered worlds, cities in flames. They believed their species was superior to all others. They enslaved or destroyed everyone they met. For 3,000 years, they dominated everything. Taemin watched the horror unfold in historical footage. What stopped them? A coalition of species finally united and defeated them. It took 200 years of war. Billions died. When it was over, the coalition faced a choice: execute the Dominion completely or find another way. Bora pulled up another document. This is the Treaty of Eternal Bonds. The victorious species forced the Dominion to participate in the first Triad program. Dominion individuals were required to bond with members of the species they'd tried to destroy. The idea was to create genetic and emotional ties that would make future wars impossible. "That's brutal," Taemin said. "It worked. Within 3 generations, the Dominion's children were half Valerian, half Kryn, half everything. They couldn't hate other species because they were other species. The program was so successful that the treaty became universal law. Every species that joined the coalition, which became the Union, had to participate. Jiwoo entered, followed by someone unexpected. Aren, Hana's sister. The Valerian woman looked nervous, carrying a data crystal. "I'm not supposed to show you this," Aren said. "But you deserve to know the whole truth." The crystal contained classified Union records, testimony from species who'd resisted the law initially, case studies on triad families, and statistical analysis covering thousands of years. The data was remarkable. Triad families showed 89% lower rates of domestic violence compared to single-species families. Hybrid children scored higher on every measure of emotional intelligence and problem-solving ability. Most striking, Member species that had been enemies for centuries became close allies within just 5 generations of triad integration. But here's what they don't talk about, Erin said, her silver eyes serious. The first 50 years are hell. Every species goes through it. Protests, violence, resistance. Some individuals never accept their matches. Some die rather than comply. It's not a gentle process. So they know it hurts people, Jiwoo said bitterly. They know it transforms societies, Erin corrected. The question is whether the long-term peace is worth the short-term pain. Taemin thought about this while walking through Seoul that evening. The city had changed in the weeks since first contact. Armed soldiers on every corner. Protests and counter-protests facing off daily. Fear and anger mixing with excitement and hope. He stopped at a small restaurant and saw a news broadcast. A man named Jun, a former soldier, had volunteered for the first trial triad. He'd been matched with 2 alien women and agreed to begin the bonding process. The interview showed him with his matches, all 3 looking nervous but determined. I fought in 3 wars, Jun said to the camera. I've seen what humans do to each other when we're divided by nationality, religion, ideology. Maybe this law seems wrong now, but if it can prevent my future grandchildren from experiencing war, I'll try it. The comment section below the video was split. Half called Jun a traitor. The other half called him brave. Taemin realized that was humanity in miniature. Divided, arguing, unable to agree on anything. He received a message from Hana asking him to meet her and Yuna at a neutral location. They chose a park on the outskirts of the city, away from cameras and protesters. It was evening, and the alien ship hung in the sky above them, still beautiful and terrifying. We need to tell you something, Hana said. The Union Council is losing patience. The violence, the delays, the uncertainty. They're starting to think humanity isn't ready for membership. We've only had a month to process this, Taemin said defensively. Yuna stepped closer. Other species took years to accept the law, but they didn't have hostile empires watching them. You do. There are 3 aggressive civilizations outside the Union who know about Earth now. If the Union withdraws its protection, they'll move in. Earth will be conquered within a decade. So we're trapped, Taemin said. Accept your law or be destroyed. Yes, Hana said softly. I'm sorry, but yes. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Taemin asked something he'd been wondering. Do you 2 get along? I mean, you're from different species. Would you choose each other if not for me? Hana and Yuna exchanged glances. Yuna actually smiled. We've been friends for years. That's why we volunteered for this assignment together. When we learned about humans, we both felt drawn to your species. Passionate, creative, stubborn. We requested to be matched with the same human. We requested you. Why me? Because you ask questions, Hana said. Because you try to understand rather than just judge. Because when you look at us, we feel seen as people, not just aliens. Taemin felt something shift in his chest. These weren't monsters or oppressors. They were women who'd chosen to take a chance on someone from a species they'd never met. They could have matched with their own kind, but they'd volunteered for the uncertainty and difficulty of a cross-species bond. I need to think, he said. Take the time you need, Yuna replied. But know this. We're already half in love with you. Whether you choose us or not, that won't change. The next day, Taemin began the formal bonding ceremony, not because he was certain, but because he needed to understand what it actually meant. The Union provided facilitators, trained psychologists who guided triads through the complex process of becoming family. The first stage was simple. Spend time together with no expectations. Talk, eat, share stories. Hana taught him about Valerian art. Yuna showed him Kryn combat techniques. He introduced them to Korean food, human music, and the chaos of human social media. They laughed together. They argued too about philosophy and politics and what made a good life. Taemin found himself looking forward to their sessions. When he was with them, the weight of Earth's decision felt lighter. Jun's story went viral. More people came forward volunteering for trial triads. Scientists released studies showing the medical benefits of hybrid genetics. Economists calculated the value of union technology and trade. Slowly, painfully, public opinion began to shift, but not everyone was convinced. The violent faction of Earth First was planning something bigger, something that would force humanity's hand one way or another. Taemin didn't know it yet, but he was about to become the target. The extremists had decided that stopping the first human-alien triad would stop the entire treaty. That night, Taemin sat in his apartment and wrote in his journal, I came into this thinking love was something that happened naturally, something you couldn't force or arrange. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe love is a choice you make every day. Maybe it's choosing to see someone, really see them, and deciding to build something together despite fear and uncertainty. If that's true, then maybe this law isn't as wrong as I thought. Maybe it's just another way to choose. He didn't know if he believed his own words yet, but he was starting to hope they might be true. Earth's President Sun He called for an emergency global summit. Every nation sent representatives. The debate had raged for 2 months now, and a decision could no longer be delayed. The Union had set a final deadline, 1 week to accept or reject membership. After that, they would leave and never return. Taemin attended the summit as the Union liaison. He sat in the massive conference hall watching world leaders argue. Some demanded rejection of the treaty, calling it cultural genocide. Others begged for acceptance, pointing to the threats lurking outside Union protection. During a break, Taemin met with Nari, Yuna's mother. The older Kryn woman had come to Earth specifically to meet him, a gesture that meant more than he initially understood. In Kryn culture, a mother meeting her daughter's potential partner was sacred. Nari was fierce and direct, just like Yuna. "My daughter has killed enemies in battle," she told Taemin over tea. "She has commanded fleets and negotiated treaties. But when she talks about you, she sounds like a child with her first crush. You have power over her heart. I need to know if you'll treat it gently." "I'm still learning how to feel about all this," Taemin admitted. "Your daughter is amazing. So is Hana, but I didn't choose them. They were assigned to me." "And yet you're here," Nari observed. "You're trying. That's the beginning of choice, even in circumstances that seem to allow none." They talked for hours. Nari shared stories of Kryn history, of how her people had resisted the Triad Law violently. "We killed Union representatives," she said bluntly. "We declared war rather than accept what we saw as weakness. It took 50 years and thousands of deaths before we understood. The law wasn't destroying us. We were destroying ourselves with pride and fear." Across the city, another meeting was taking place. Daehyun sat in a small apartment with a dozen members of his inner circle. They were planning a protest at the summit, something big enough to force the world's attention. But 3 of them had other plans. They called themselves true believers, and they decided that peaceful protest wasn't enough. They had weapons, they had explosives, and they had a target, the Union ship hovering over Geneva. Daehyun didn't know about the splinter group yet. He was focused on his speech, the one he'd give at the protest. He believed in his cause. The Triad Law was wrong. Forced breeding was wrong. Humanity deserved to make its own choices, even if those choices led to mistakes. Meanwhile, Minseo, a single mother of 2, testified at the summit. Her story represented millions of people in complicated situations. "I'm not married," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "My children's father left us years ago. What happens to me under this law? Do I have to form a triad? What about my kids?" A Union representative, Ayla, answered with compassion. "Existing family structures are protected. You and your children are safe. The law applies only to adults who are not in committed relationships, and to future generations when they come of age. Your children will make their own choices when they're ready." "But they won't really have choices," Minseo said. "They'll be assigned partners." "They'll have more choice than you think," Isla replied. "The matching process considers thousands of factors. Personality, interests, values, dreams, fears. It's not random, and if a match truly doesn't work, adjustments can be made. The law is firm but not cruel." The testimony sparked another heated debate. Some saw it as reassuring, others saw it as manipulation. The division in the conference hall mirrored the division across Earth. Taemin's bonding with Hana and Yuna had progressed to the second stage, physical and emotional intimacy. It wasn't about sex, not yet. It was about learning to be comfortable in each other's presence, learning to trust. They practiced Valerian meditation, where Hana's bioluminescent skin would pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats. They tried Kryn trust exercises, where Yuna would guide them through mock combat scenarios that required complete reliance on each other. And they talked. About everything. Their childhoods, their fears, their hopes for the future. Taemin told them about his parents' death, about feeling lost in a world that seemed too big and complicated. Hana shared her anxiety about being far from home, about whether she could truly love someone so different. Yuna admitted she'd never expected to feel vulnerable, but somehow Taemin and Hana had broken through her warrior's shell. I think I'm falling in love with both of you, Taemin confessed one evening. And it terrifies me because I don't know if it's real or if I've just convinced myself because the alternative is too hard. Does it matter? Hana asked. Love is always a choice. Even in human relationships where you think it's natural, you still choose every day to stay, to work through problems, to build something together. This is the same. We just acknowledged the choice from the beginning. The day before the deadline, President Sun-hee made an announcement. Earth would hold a global referendum. Every adult human would vote, accept union membership with the Triad Law, or reject it and face the galaxy alone. The vote would take place in 48 hours. The campaign was intense. Both sides mobilized every resource, except the union group showed footage of union worlds, of hybrid children laughing and playing, of species that had been enemies now living as neighbors. Reject the union groups showed historical footage of conquered peoples, of cultures erased, of freedom lost. Daehyun held his massive protest the next day. 2 million people marched through Geneva. It was peaceful, powerful, a demonstration of humanity's fierce independence. Taemin watched from the summit building and felt pride in his species. Even facing impossible choices, they stood together. Then the explosion happened. The Splinter Group had smuggled a bomb into the Union ship. It detonated in a storage bay, killing 3 Union workers and injuring a dozen more. The blast was visible from the ground, a bright flash against the ship's hull. The summit erupted in chaos. Union delegates were rushed to safety. Human security forces scrambled to understand what happened, and in the confusion, Taemin realized that Hana and Yuna were still on the ship. He ran. Security tried to stop him, but he fought through. He reached the transport platform that shuttled between ground and ship. A Union guard blocked his way. The ship is locked down. No one enters. My partners are up there, Taemin shouted. He'd never called them that before, partners. The word felt right. The guard hesitated, then saw something in Taemin's face. She stepped aside. Bay 7. That's where the injured were taken. Taemin materialized on the ship and ran through corridors that shifted and reformed around him. He found Bay 7 and saw the aftermath. Bodies covered by sheets. Medical teams working frantically. And in the corner, Hana and Yuna, both covered in dust and minor injuries but alive. They saw him and their faces transformed. He crossed the space between them and pulled both into an embrace. I thought I lost you, he said. I can't lose you. We're okay, Yuna said, but her voice shook. She was never shaken. It was a human attack. Your people tried to kill us. Not my people, Taemin said fiercely. Extremists, terrorists, they don't represent humanity. But the damage was done. The Union Council called an emergency session. Some wanted to leave immediately, to mark humanity as too violent for membership. Others argued that this proved why the Triad Law was necessary, to prevent exactly this kind of hatred between species. President Sun-hee addressed the world that night. Her face was grave but determined. Tomorrow we vote. But know this, violence will not dictate our choice. Fear will not dictate our choice. We will decide our future as we've always decided it, together, through the messy but beautiful process of democracy. Whatever we choose freely. Taemin stayed on the ship that night with Hana and Yuna. They held each other and didn't talk much. Words seemed inadequate. He'd nearly lost them, and in that moment of terror he'd realized the truth he'd been avoiding. He loved them. Not because he was supposed to, not because they were assigned to him, but because of who they were. Hana's kindness. Yuna's strength. The way they saw him, really saw him, and chose him back. Whatever Earth decides, he told them, I choose you. Both of you. If the treaty fails, I'll fight to change it, but I won't lose you. They fell asleep tangled together. 3 different species becoming one family. Outside, Earth prepared to vote on humanity's future. The morning of the vote, Taemin woke between Hana and Yuna in their shared quarters on the Union ship. For a moment, he forgot about the referendum, the crisis, everything. He just felt warm and safe and loved. Then reality crashed back. His phone exploded with messages. His sister. His colleagues. News alerts. In 12 hours, every human would cast their vote. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. You should go, Hana said softly, already awake. Your people need to see you. We'll be here when you return. Taemin kissed them both and left. Down on Earth, the cities were quiet in a way he'd never experienced. No traffic, no protests. Everyone was inside, preparing to vote. The digital voting system would open at noon, close at midnight. By morning, humanity would know its future. At UN headquarters, Taemin found an urgent message waiting. Wu Jin, a special forces operative he'd worked with before, needed to meet immediately. They rendezvoused in a secure room. "We've identified the bombers," Wu Jin said without preamble. 3 of them died in the explosion. But we traced their communications. They weren't working alone. Someone was feeding them information, helping them plan. "Who?" Taemin asked, dreading the answer. "That's the problem. The communications came from outside Earth. Someone in orbit using encryption we've never seen before. Not Union tech. Something else." Taemin's blood went cold. "Another alien species?" "We think so. And there's more." Wu Jin pulled up a holographic display. "We've been tracking Daehyun's communications too. He's clean, actually. Genuinely believes in his cause. But someone in his organization has been manipulated. We think there's a mole who's been pushing the movement toward violence." They spent the next 3 hours following the digital trail. It was complicated, obscured by layers of encryption and false identities. But slowly a pattern emerged. Messages encouraging violence. Funds transferred to extremists. And at the center, a single individual. Daehyun's most trusted advisor, a man named Seok. "We need to bring him in," Wu Jin said. "But quietly. If this becomes public before the vote, it could swing everything toward rejection out of pure paranoia." Taemin contacted Daehyun directly. The resistance leader was suspicious at first, but when shown the evidence, his face went pale. "Seok has been with me from the beginning," he said. "He's the one who suggested the most aggressive tactics. I thought he was just passionate." "He's being used," Taemin explained. "Someone outside Earth is trying to manipulate humanity into rejecting the Union. They want us isolated and vulnerable." Daehyun clenched his fists. "I've been played. We've all been played." They tracked Seok to a warehouse on the outskirts of Geneva. Wu Jin assembled a small team. They breached the building and found Seok in the middle of a communication with an unknown alien species. The holographic display showed a creature unlike anything in the Union, insectoid and aggressive-looking. The creature spoke in broken English. "When humans reject Union, we come. Earth becomes our colony. Your species becomes our workers." Seok looked up as the team entered, his face a mix of guilt and defiance. "They promised me they just wanted to trade with Earth, to offer an alternative to the Union." "You believed slavers over allies," Wu Jin said coldly, placing him in restraints. "You've endangered our entire species." They captured the communication device and brought everything to President Sun Hee. She faced an impossible choice. Reveal the conspiracy before the vote or let humanity decide without knowing about the external threat. Revealing it might seem like manipulation. Hiding it left Earth vulnerable to making an uninformed choice. Sun Hee decided to go public. 3 hours before voting opened, she addressed the world. "Citizens of Earth," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she carried. "I must inform you of a developing situation." She explained everything. The conspiracy, the bombers, the hostile alien species waiting for Earth to reject Union protection. She showed footage of the communication with the insectoid aliens. She revealed that the violence plaguing the debate hadn't been entirely human in origin. "I'm not telling you how to vote," Sun Hee said. "That's your right. But you deserve to know that this choice isn't between freedom and oppression. It's between one kind of integration and another. The Union offers us partnership as equals. The alternative offers us chains." The revelation sent shockwaves through humanity. Social media exploded with reactions. Daehyun held a press conference visibly shaken. "I fought against the Union because I believed in human autonomy," he said. "But I was wrong. Not about wanting freedom, but about where real freedom comes from. It comes from having real choices, not the illusion of choice. I'm voting to accept the Union Treaty." His words carried weight. Many of his followers listened. Others accused him of betrayal. The movement he'd built fractured, some staying loyal to the cause, others reconsidering everything. Voting opened at noon. The system was secure, verified by both human and Union technology. Every adult on Earth had access. They could vote from home, from public terminals, from anywhere. The question was simple. Do you accept Earth's membership in the Galactic Union under the terms presented, including all cultural integration requirements? Taemin voted yes. It felt both momentous and simple. He believed in the choice now, not because it was easy, but because the alternative was worse. He thought about his future children, hybrid beings who would belong to 3 species who would carry Earth's legacy into the stars. The hours crawled by. Turnout was 97%, higher than any vote in human history. Everyone understood the stakes. This wasn't about politics or economics. This was about survival and identity and what humanity would become. Taemin spent the evening with Hana, Yuna, and surprisingly, Daehyun. The former resistance leader had asked to meet them, to see the face of what he'd fought against. They sat in a quiet room in the UN facility and talked. "I owe you an apology," Daehyun said to Hana and Yuna. "I saw you as oppressors. I didn't see you as people with your own fears and hopes." "You were protecting your people," Yuna said. "I understand that instinct. We all do." They shared stories. Daehyun talked about his childhood, growing up poor, learning to fight for what seemed right. Hana talked about leaving Valara, about the courage it took to bond with someone from an unknown species. Yuna admitted that she'd been terrified at first, worried she'd fail, worried Taemin would reject her. "I'm still afraid," Taemin said, "but I'm more afraid of losing this, of losing you both." At midnight, voting closed. The count began immediately. Results started flowing in from different regions. The first numbers were close, almost exactly 50-50. Then Asia's votes came in, trending toward acceptance. Africa was mixed. Europe leaned toward rejection. North America was split. President Sun Hee appeared on screens worldwide at 2 a.m. Her face was exhausted but peaceful. "Citizens of Earth," she said. "The vote is complete. With a turnout of 97%, the highest in recorded history, Earth has spoken." The pause felt eternal. Taemin held Hana's hand on one side, Yuna's on the other. Daehyun sat forward, barely breathing. Across Earth, billions waited. By a margin of 68% to 32%, Earth has voted to accept membership in the Galactic Union. Taemin felt tears on his face. Hana was crying too, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with emotion. Yuna simply pulled them both close, her warrior stoicism finally breaking into a smile. Outside, the cities erupted. In some places, celebration. In others, grief and anger. But across most of Earth, a sense of relief. The decision was made. The uncertainty was over. Whatever came next, they would face it together. President Sun Hee continued, "I know this outcome brings pain to many. I want you to know your concerns are valid. Your fears are real. We will implement this transition with care, with respect for human dignity, and with flexibility for individual circumstances. We have negotiated a 10-year adjustment period. Existing families are protected. Cultural traditions will be honored. This is not the end of humanity. It's humanity growing up, joining a larger family while keeping what makes us special." The Union ship above Geneva lit up in celebration, patterns of light dancing across its surface. Similar displays appeared over every major city. The Union was welcoming Earth home. Taemin looked at his partners, his loves, his future. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." "No," Hana corrected gently. "Humanity did it. You just showed them it was possible." But the story wasn't over. In the shadows of Earth's decision, questions remained. Why had the Union really wanted humanity? What was the true purpose of the Triad Law? And what shocking truth lay hidden in the Union's ancient history, waiting to change everything? 5 years passed. Earth transformed beyond recognition. The skyline of every major city now included structures built with Union technology, buildings that seemed to defy gravity and physics. Faster-than-light ships departed regularly, carrying humans to Union worlds and bringing aliens to Earth. The integration was messy, complicated, and ongoing, but it was happening. Taemin stood in his apartment in Seoul, watching his daughter Da-eun play. She was 3 years old, the first child born to him. Hana. And Yuna. Her skin shifted between tones, sometimes showing Hana's faint blue glow, sometimes Yuna's copper sheen, sometimes just looking human. Her eyes were silver like Hana's but had Yuna's intensity. She was brilliant, speaking 3 languages fluently at an age when most human children barely formed sentences. "Papa," Daehyun said, looking up at him. "When do I get to visit the stars?" "Soon," Taemin promised, scooping her up. Soon. The transition hadn't been smooth. The first 2 years were especially difficult. Protests continued. though they'd lost their violent edge after the conspiracy was exposed. Some humans had rejected their assigned matches outright and chosen isolation instead. Others had embraced the triads enthusiastically. Most people fell somewhere in between, trying their best with varying degrees of success. Mars and the Moon colonies had initially declared independence, refusing to follow Earth's choice. But after seeing Earth's rapid advancement with Union technology, and facing their own vulnerability to hostile aliens, they'd eventually rejoined. It took 3 years of negotiation, but now the entire solar system was part of the Union. Timon's life had changed completely. He was no longer just a liaison. He'd become an ambassador, one of the voices representing humanity in Union councils. Hana worked as a cultural integration specialist, helping newly bonded triads navigate their relationships. Yuna had joined Union security forces, protecting Earth from the threats that still lurked beyond Union borders. Their marriage, their triad, was complicated but real. They fought sometimes, struggled with jealousy and cultural misunderstandings, had to work through problems that no previous generation had faced. But they also loved deeply, supported each other fiercely, and built something beautiful together. Today was special. The Union Council was holding an emergency assembly, and all member species were required to attend. The message had been cryptic. A truth that has been hidden will be revealed. Almost here. Taemin, Hana, and Yuna took a shuttle to the Union Central Governance Station, a massive structure that orbited a neutron star in the galaxy's core. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of species filled the grand chamber. The energy was tense with anticipation. Elder Sung was there too. The old man was now 134 years old, kept alive by Union medical technology. He sat in the human delegation, his eyes knowing. Taemin had learned over the years that Sung had more influence than anyone suspected, that he'd been guiding human policy from the shadows. But why remained a mystery? The assembly was called to order. At the center of the chamber, a figure appeared that Taemin had never seen before. She was ancient, her form barely physical, more energy than matter. She belonged to a species called the Keepers, one of the oldest in the Union. "I am Vera," she said, her voice resonating in everyone's mind rather than through sound. "I am the last of those who remember the truth. The Union Council has decided it is time to share what has been hidden for 12,000 years. The chamber fell absolutely silent. Even the most jaded diplomats leaned forward. This was unprecedented. "You believe the Triad Law was created as punishment for the Dominion," Vera continued. "You believe it was a way to prevent war by creating genetic ties between species. This is partially true, but it is not the whole truth." Holographic displays filled the chamber, showing images from millions of years in the past. Countless civilizations rising and falling, species reaching for the stars only to destroy themselves. War plague, environmental collapse. The cycle repeated endlessly. "We Keepers are ancient," Vera said. "We have watched the galaxy for eons, and we discovered a terrible pattern. Every single species civilization, without exception, destroys itself within 50,000 years of achieving spaceflight. Every single one." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Taemin felt his heart racing. This was impossible. 50,000 years seemed like forever. "The reasons vary," Vera continued. "Resource depletion, civil war, genetic stagnation, technological catastrophe. But the outcome is always the same: extinction. We watched 1,000 species rise and fall before we understood why." The displays shifted to show DNA helices, genetic structures, biological processes beyond Taemin's understanding. Single-species populations become trapped in evolutionary dead ends. They optimize for one environment, one set of pressures, one way of being. When circumstances change, they cannot adapt quickly enough. They die. But species that genetically merge, Vera said, and the displays now showed hybrid DNA, infinitely more complex and adaptable, create evolutionary flexibility. A single-species civilization faces extinction when their world changes. A multi-species genetic legacy survives because somewhere in the galaxy, some portion of their DNA continues in offspring adapted to hundreds of different environments. Taemin understood what she was saying, but the implications were staggering. The Triad Law wasn't about peace at all. It was about survival at a biological level. 12,000 years ago, Vera continued, The Keepers revealed this truth to the coalition that defeated the Dominion. We showed them their future. Extinction within 30,000 years if they remained genetically isolated. We offered an alternative. Forced genetic integration through the Triad Law. It seemed cruel. Many species, including my own, rebelled initially, but we implemented it anyway because the alternative was worse. And it worked. The species that participated in the Triad program have their DNA spread across the galaxy now. Even if their homeworlds are destroyed, their genetic legacy continues. They achieved what no single species civilization ever has: biological immortality. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Delegates argued, questioned, demanded more information. President Sun He, still Earth's leader, stood up. Are you saying that humans would have gone extinct without this law? Within 20,000 years, yes, Vera said simply. Your species is brilliant but also destructive. You would have destroyed your environment, or yourselves, or been destroyed by external forces. It was inevitable. But now, Sun He pressed. Now human DNA is already mixing with hundreds of other species. Within 10 generations, there will be human-descended children on thousands of worlds, adapted to conditions you cannot imagine. Even if Earth is destroyed tomorrow, humanity continues. You have achieved something your ancestors could only dream of: genuine immortality. Taemin looked at Da-Un in Hana's arms. His daughter would live on worlds he'd never see. Her children would be adapted to environments he couldn't survive. The human species would spread across the galaxy not through conquest or colonization, but through love and family and genetic mixing. Elder Sung stood, his old body steady. I met a keeper 80 years ago, he announced, his voice clear despite his age. She showed me this truth. She told me that when first contact came, I should guide humanity toward acceptance. I have spent my entire life preparing Earth for this moment. You knew? President Sun He said, shocked. You knew and didn't tell us? Would you have believed me? Sung asked. Or would you have called me insane? The truth had to be discovered by each species in its own time, after they had already committed to the path. Dae-hyun, who'd become an advisor on integration policies, stood up as well. This changes everything. The Triad Law isn't oppression. It's a gift. It's the galaxy saving us from ourselves. It's both, Vera said. It is forced change, and that is always difficult. But it is necessary change. The price of remaining purely human was extinction. The price of joining the Union is transformation. Which price would you rather pay? The assembly continued for hours. Every species had questions. Many were angry at the deception, at being forced into a program without understanding its true purpose. Others were relieved, understanding for the first time why the law had seemed so important to the Union. Finally, Vera made one last statement. The shocking truth is not that the law exists. It's why you are all immortal now, not as individuals but as genetic legacies. Your descendants will inherit the stars not because they are purely you, but because they are everything. The universe does not reward purity. It rewards diversity, adaptability, the ability to become something new while honoring what came before. The assembly ended. Delegates returned to their delegations to process what they'd learned. Taemin held his family close. All four of them tangled together as they looked out at the stars through the station's massive viewing port. I thought I was losing my humanity when I bonded with you, Taemin said to Hana and Yuna. I didn't realize I was gaining the universe. Your people will join the stars now, Yuna said, echoing words she'd spoken 5 years ago. Not as conquerors, but as family. Da-Un reached up toward the viewing port. Her small hand showing 3 different skin textures merged perfectly. Papa, are those stars where I come from?